Hello and welcome to another edition of Tomorrow's Transfers Today, the show where we take from Monday to Friday every weekday. We have a look at what stories are going to be breaking and the stories that you're going to be reading in the newspapers and on the back pages tomorrow. My name is Paul. You might recognise me from other versions of this show, other videos on the channel. Perhaps you're familiar with my podcast, The Rantcast. I'm the one that comes along when the others are all busy doing cool stuff. And for some reason, I'm also the one that seems to be here every time there's hard news. Because look at this graphic here. Look at this. I'm pointing the wrong way because it's backwards. There you go. See where it says out? We've got another one to add to the out list. Because Manchester United have announced on their Twitter account that, I'm going to read the exact wording, MUFC has agreed terms with Ajax for the transfer of @Blind Daley. A further announcement will be made in due course. So Daley Blind is officially off. Now, last time I was on the show a few days ago, someday last week, we had stories suggesting that this was likely to happen. I think we've all said, everyone that's covering United this summer has said they wouldn't be surprised to see Daley Blind go. It was pretty clear that he's been surplus to requirements. So I'd be interested. Producer Chris is monitoring the chat, and he'll feed me with any questions that come through from the chat. I'd be very interested to know what you guys make of that as a decision from the club, and especially more to the point, what are your favourite memories of Daley Blind at United? For me, it is the equaliser in the West Brom 2-2. I was sat in the home end at that game. It was at the Hawthorns, and I was watching from across the crowd as Blind scored in front of the United fans to make it 2-2 somewhere near the beginning. It's like November time, October time maybe, in Van Gaal's first season in charge. Talking of Van Gaal, Daley Blind, the kind of ultimate Van Gaal player. He was a player that was signed very late in the transfer window in Van Gaal's first season. A player who, even at the time, I slightly thought, is Blind coming as a backup option? He'd been part of Van Gaal's successful 2014 World Cup squad with the Netherlands, and clearly the manager really valued his versatility. A player who had grown up playing in the centre of midfield but had converted very successfully to left back. Van Gaal took that yet another step further, and in his second season, of course, Blind was a starting centre back for United, something which feels like a strange fever dream now, and really could only be the product of a manager who really, really valued his centre-backs for their ability on the ball. Van Gaal, in the early 2000s, some Dutch writers wrote a book about the philosophies of Van Gaal, and he described his centre-backs as playmakers, the true playmakers on the pitch, because further forward there was less space, but centre-backs had the most space of any kind of creative player on the pitch to work in. And I remember in Mourinho's first season in charge, in fact the very first game that Mourinho was in charge against Bournemouth, I remember being sat there at the Cherries ground, watching as Blind kind of got to the halfway line, played a safe ball to the central midfielder, and then went back to his position, and thought, here we have a very significant change from the way that Van Gaal would have approached it, because Mourinho clearly wanted very different things from his centre-backs. I mean, Blind kept his role as centre-back for a while under Mourinho, but last season kind of pretty clearly drifted out of favour. Ashley Young ahead of him in the pecking order at left-back. That's kind of somewhat been justified, I guess, by Ashley Young's excellent World Cup playing in that position. But yeah, a very fine technical player. If he was, a couple of inches taller, and especially if he was a couple of inches quicker, a couple of seconds quicker, Blind could have been really a very, very top level player. A goal versus Liverpool, says Yaya Toure, will always remember that. Yeah, of course, any United player that scores a goal against Liverpool will enter into club legend. But I'm not sure Daley Blind leaves us as a club legend. I mean, it's an interesting decision by the manager. It's a sacrifice of versatility. But, Mourinho, in his first press conference in charge of United, said that he likes specialists more than he likes multifunctional players, whereas, of course, Van Gaal was all about the multifunctional player. And this is yet another Van Gaal signing that has left United already, which, that is a great majority of the players that Van Gaal brought into the club have already been moved on, which really does speak volumes about how ultimately unsuccessful his transfer policy has been. I'm not sure we could say that Blind was an unsuccessful transfer, but definitely a kind of middling success rather than an absolute barnstormer, hence why he's being sold to Ajax, back to his childhood club and the club that his father played for also. All right. That's some actual hard news. We'll pop back for anything more that the chat's got to say about Blind throughout the show. But I guess it's time for us to talk about some rumours, and we've got some fun ones. We've got some stuff about Mbappe, some stuff about Bale, some stuff about Alex Sandro, and a bit of an opinion piece on Perisic. And of course, we've got to talk about the crazy situation with Alexis Sanchez not being allowed into America. I'm going to avoid any potential political hot potatoes there. Talking of hot potatoes, this is nothing to do with hot potatoes, but it is a story that comes to us from the Manchester Evening News, courtesy of our good friends at Don Ballon. As I've said every time I've been on this show and Don Ballon has come up, at Bleacher Report we had very strict attribution guidelines. We were allowed to use pretty much any publication. We were allowed to reference any transfer rumour so long as it came from a publication somewhere. But Don Ballon was not allowed to be used as an attributed source. So Bleacher Report have got more kind of exacting standards than Manchester Evening News when it comes to reporting this. But listen, if there's one thing the MEN love, absolutely love, it's a click. This one has been written's a strong word, by Richard Fay at MEN. He does, to be fair, describe Don Ballon as a notorious Spanish transfer outlet. So at least there's some degree of acknowledgement that this is probably a load of old nonsense. But Don Ballon are currently saying that Jose Mourinho is keen on a move for the 19-year-old World Cup winning Kylian Mbappe. And can I just say, at this point, I am also very keen on a move for Kylian Mbappe for Manchester United. But the chances of there actually being a move from United for Kylian Mbappe seem a little bit remote. I mean, you know, the Pogba signing is probably the only signing we've made in the last number of years, even when we've been kind of signing really big name players, where you could truly say that this player can pretty much have their pick of clubs. I mean, we outbid City for Alexis Sanchez, and that was clearly about flexing financial muscles. Angel Di Maria felt a little bit like he didn't really have anywhere else to go. Zlatan's obviously coming towards the end of his career and wanted to play with Jose again. And Pogba, crucially, has the United links. I mean, we love United. We're United fans. We've been told over and over and over again that United are the biggest club in the world. And maybe that's true. If you want to build your social media following, perhaps Manchester United would be the best possible club that you could go to. But I'm not sure Real Madrid and Barcelona would be too far behind. And it's probably fair to say that from a purely footballing standpoint, Real Madrid and Barcelona would be a better option for a player like Mbappe than Manchester United. And it breaks my heart to say that. I would love it if we were really competing at the top table again. But how can we say we're competing at the top table again when we haven't even won our domestic league for the last 5 years? All right, we won a European trophy in that time, but it was the Europa League. Now, I think Mbappe should definitely leave Paris Saint-Germain, or, well, I mean, whether he permanently signs for them. Assuming he permanently signs for them, he shouldn't hang around there too long. But if Mbappe somehow comes to United this summer, it will be an absolutely enormous shock. However, Neymar did go to PSG last summer, which is probably a shock of a similar level. So, of course, anything is possible in this crazy old world. Even Don Ballon getting a story right. Apparently, according to their report, even if we're prepared to even let Paul Pogba leave to get Mbappe, although I feel like that's a bit like buying some bullets and selling a gun, to use an unpleasant metaphor, given how vital Paul Pogba was in Mbappe having the kind of World Cup he did. How good was our boy in the World Cup final, by the way? Oh, what a dream it was to see him play so brilliantly on such a big stage. When he scored the goal, I went absolutely out of my mind celebrating that goal. It was a beautiful moment. talking of beautiful moments, the other night I had a dream, an actual dream. I wish I could say I was making this up. I think it's doing this show late at night that made me have this dream. But I had an actual dream that Manchester United signed Gareth Bale. Unfortunately, it does look like we will have to be asleep to see that happening because, according to a story in the Metro, which hasn't got a direct attribution, but as far as I can work out, comes from a story that was published earlier this evening in the Daily Telegraph, which had some actual reporting attached to it by a guy called John Percy in the Telegraph. United are probably not going to get Gareth Bale this summer. I have to say, at the full-time whistle in the Champions League final, I would have been perfectly prepared to believe that United might get Gareth Bale this summer, but the departure of Zidane, who clearly underrated Bale, and especially the departure of Ronaldo means, surely Real Madrid are not going to get rid of both Ronaldo and Bale in the same summer. I mean, listen, I guess it could happen. Maybe Lopetegui feels similarly to Zidane about Gareth Bale, but that would seem most peculiar given what a fantastic player Bale is. I mean, if I was Madrid, I would be using the power of 20 nails to hold on to a player of Gareth Bale's quality. So perhaps we'll see him at United this summer. There's rumours that have never gone away that he at some point definitely wants to come back to the UK. Certainly a couple of seasons ago, very intense, strong rumours behind the scenes that he was not that happy from a kind of personal perspective living in Spain, but he's obviously been phenomenally successful at Real Madrid. A guy called Anthony Martin, writing on Here in the City, HITC Sport, has written a blog post saying that Tottenham would make a real statement by beating Manchester United to Ivan Perisic. When I first saw this headline, I thought maybe this was based on some kind of actual story of Tottenham interest in Perisic, but this is just some blogger who reckons that Spurs should compete with United for Perisic. First of all, are we in for Perisic? Would that even be a competition? And secondly, if it was a straight fight between Spurs and United, okay, there might be some players who plump for the kind of Pochettino project option and the excitement of playing in a new stadium, and maybe even the sense that they've got a better first 11 than us, but I'm not convinced that's true anymore. They've obviously got some fine players at Spurs, but with Moussa Dembele slightly on the wane, they're going to be extremely reliant on Harry Kane again, which won't be a problem because he does score bagsfuls of goals, but maybe they'll lose Toby Alderweireld, although they've kind of pre-replaced him with Alexis Sanchez. But anyway, I still don't think, I mean, having said that, I'm not sure that United could consider themselves a particularly realistic destination for Mbappe. The flip side of that is I don't think there's much chance that we're going to be losing out in direct fights when it comes to transfers with Tottenham Hotspur yet. I mean, it could be a kind of ugly future, but I think United have got too much to offer, not least of all from a financial perspective, because, you know, all the talk about Spurs is that they're kind of maintaining a fairly firm grip on their wage cap. So, sorry, Here in the City, I don't think that's going to happen. My boy Ruben Pinder, who is officially a good lad, writing in Sports Joe, covers a story on Calcio about Alex Sandro, and having kind of announced that this show started with hard news and Daley Blind's leaving and we're not signing Gareth Bale and there's an Mbappe story, but it's almost certainly nonsense. I can't believe we're ending on what yet another kind of downer, where Alex Sandro has agreed personal terms with Paris Saint-Germain, apparently, according to Calcio Mercato. This is going to be a massive money transfer, it seems, and PSG clearly need to bolster their ranks if they want to make a run for the Champions League. Now, you know, the funny thing about this Sandro story, and then again, like, could seem completely ridiculous if this comes back to haunt me. The little bits and pieces that I've heard from friends who work in football have never really been massively big that yet we are definitely nailed on in for Alex Sandro, although that has been the big story this summer. I wonder if this isn't going to end up being a kind of Lukaku Morata situation and actually Sandro's something of a smokescreen for other people. That's not me trying to make myself feel better about the fact that he goes to PSG. If PSG have beaten us to his signing, that's obviously a pretty big blow, given that pre-season starts in just a couple of days, a few days' time, and it doesn't seem by any means that United have done all their business yet. One thing that pre-season will be starting without is Alexis Sanchez. Not because he's injured, not because he's fallen out with Mourinho or anything crazy like that, and certainly not because of the World Cup, because of course Sanchez didn't go to the World Cup as Chile surprisingly didn't make it. But he's going to miss the start of the United States tour because he's not been able to get a visa. This is to do with the fact that he's got a 16-month suspended jail sentence in Spain for tax fraud. You know, because he's a footballer living in Spain, so tax fraud. I mean, they're all at it. I mean, they're either all at it or something's crazy in the Spanish tax system. But there's an awful lot of very, very high-profile Spanish players having issues, let's say, around tax. Under US law, according to the BBC, no person found guilty of fraud can be granted a visa to enter the country. There is a waiver scheme, and it's understood that Sanchez is working with his lawyers in an effort to be granted access to the United States, but the process is taking longer than he had hoped. So United play on Thursday night, Friday morning at 3 a.m, and then they play on Sunday evening. Both of those in the States. Obviously, I think the first five games are in the States on this summer tour. And so if by any chance this doesn't get sorted out, that means Sanchez won't get his first preseason game until quite a way into August. I think, the beginning of August when we play Bayern at the Allianz Arena. Okay, we've run out of time for the show. Before I go, I must plug, if you want more United transfer stuff, including some pre-chat about Daley Blind, Stephen Howson did a transfer review video, which was uploaded onto the channel earlier today, so check that out if you absolutely can't get enough of United's transfers. If want more of this sort of stuff, me and my podcast co-host Ed just recorded the last of our World Cup specials with a bit of a preview of United's pre-season tour. You can get that by searching iTunes or whatever podcast software you use for Rantcast. And thank you for having me. I'll be back another time in the future, and until then you'll see me in the tabloids. The tabloids are bad. Why did I make this my sign-off? I blame Chris. See you soon.